Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We're so excited to have you all here today. We know it's going to warm up quickly, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We are incredibly excited to have with us Secretary Buttigieg, who is graciously spending time here in our state. We had an opportunity to meet with him yesterday in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, with the Western Governors Association, where we talked about some of the issues facing our states in the West with transportation, and we were excited to get a preview of an announcement from Secretary Buttigieg and the work that he's doing as a result of the infrastructure bill. I want to begin just by talking a little bit about why this is so important. From the Capitol, you can look out here and see many of our cities are right up against the mountains and forest lands. This is the case, of course, through much of our state. And as beautiful as mountains and forests are, wildfires and flooding can prove dangerous to our transportation grid, our property, and our lives. As I mentioned earlier this week, I was with my fellow Western governors of both parties and federal officials, and one of the topics that we discussed there was restoring burned landscapes to prevent the flooding, mudslides, and pollution of our water supplies that so often follow a wildfire. Now, I want to talk just a little bit. This is incredibly timely. We have a perfect example of why this matters. You may recall that in 2017, we had a disastrous wildfire in the Bryan Head area that left a burn scar of more than 71,000 acres. So this made the area, a couple of roads, SR 20 to SR 143, as well as I-15, vulnerable to flash flooding that often follows a fire. Now, UDOT immediately took action to minimize risk from potential flash flooding by cleaning out the armored channels and upsizing culverts in 8 key locations, knowing that this was very likely to happen. The emergency response to a wildfire like this requires a team of partners working together. In this case, the team included UDOT, the counties, the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fire Service, National Resource Conservation Services, FEMA, the Department of Public Safety, the Utah Highway Patrol, the Department of Emergency Management, and the Department of Natural Resources, all working in coordination. Now, in Utah, we are so fortunate to have a culture of collaboration across organizations to make it work, and that's exactly what this team did. Local government received FEMA funding, but their needs exceeded what they could afford. They needed to build bigger drainage infrastructure, weather monitoring technology, and walls to protect the road in case of future flooding. So UDOT stepped up to help address those additional needs. They invested approximately $2 million from their existing budget. Now, had UDOT not done that, that is money that could have been spent on other things, could have been used for a variety of improvements ranging from safety projects to road repairs to bike lanes in other parts of the state. That is why the PROTECT program that we're going to talk about today is so very important and valuable. It provides the resources that departments of transportation and local governments will need to invest in transportation resilience and move fast when an incident occurs. And we can do it without sacrificing the other transportation needs of our system. Just yesterday, we saw this play out in real time. Around 3 p.m., a storm surge caused flooding in the same area of the Bryan Head as the 2017 fire. Now, I want to point out that when you have a wildfire and we get the fire out, everybody thinks we're done. Very often, 3 to 5 years later, we are still having flooding from those burn scars. So once again, several feet of mud and debris were pushed onto SR 143, and the road was closed in both directions. Now, at first glance, that may not seem like a resounding success story, but let me tell you why it is. UDOT and Bryan Head City were able to clear the road in about 3 hours, compared to around 24 hours in 2017, and they initiated their response faster thanks to early data from a new weather monitoring system. Before traffic was closed several times, so crews could repair chunks of missing asphalt, this time there doesn't appear to be any significant damage to the road. The work UDOT and their teammates did in 2017 and 2018 paid off. As a result of proactive resilience planning, the road was open after just a few hours rather than the days or weeks that it has taken to do major repairs in the past. We see cases like this throughout the state, especially in our rural communities and remote areas. Transportation corridors are lifelines to these areas. Closed roadways can cause major problems in some parts of our state. If a road is closed, it can cause detours that take hours. I have to just add one caveat here. In 2012, we had a major fire in Sanpete and Carbon, Emery counties, right around those county lines. For my friends who worked in those power plants, when that road closed, and it closed often for 5 years, it would take them 3 hours to get to work one way. So 6 hours round trip to get to work instead of the 45-minute drive that it would normally take them. Yesterday, we saw what happens when we invest in resilience. For people who use that road, it was a minor inconvenience, not a disruption to their lives. Before nightfall, people were able to get out to our national parks, drive home, or get wherever they needed to go safely. We must do all we can to maintain safe roadways. Hotter temperatures and drought conditions are a recipe for wildfires. Even as we emphasize wildfire prevention, we've got to be prepared. The PROTECT program will help us prepare for natural disasters and give us the ability to think long term. The PROTECT program will make our transportation system and critical infrastructure more resilient now and will allow us to plan ahead for the future. Now, I want to thank again personally Secretary Buttigieg for his support and his advocacy on behalf of our roadway systems, our transportation systems here in Utah and across the country. There are bipartisan solutions out there, and this is a perfect example of that. We need more of this kind of collaborative problem solving in Washington. With that, I'm very excited to turn the microphone over, and please join me in welcoming Secretary Buttigieg.
Well, thanks very much, Governor. Really appreciate the chance to join you and the way you have welcomed us to your state. Really enjoyed being with you with the Western governors yesterday as well. And I got to tell you, this is a community that has always made Chasten and me both feel very welcome whenever we come. I want to express my appreciation for the bipartisan leadership and work. We don't have to agree on every particular to do very good work together, especially when it comes to improving our transportation infrastructure. I want to thank our local leadership for being here, Mayor Mendenhall, Mayor Wilson. So glad to be with you and feel that job has only become more demanding and more difficult since I had it, but you've done it so well for the city and for the county. I'm really honored to have the First Lady here and the Lieutenant Governor as well. Residents here have been seeing, as the governor just described, the results of extreme weather with their own eyes. And we've been seeing it day by day with this news of extreme weather events. We'll be seeing it in the burn scars on the roads that are near the roads that I'll have a chance to see shortly. The Great Salt Lake itself drying up. Remnants of those fires being breathed in by children and families. And people are feeling it in their bottom lines as businesses, from the lakeside to farmland to ski slopes, are dealing with the consequences. And you're not alone. Yesterday, as I mentioned, I was in Idaho with Western governors, and so many of them made clear the challenges that their residents have been facing from increasingly extreme weather. We've seen droughts lasting longer than the Dust Bowl, floods in Yellowstone that washed out infrastructure and closed the park, the mudslide in Colorado that closed roads and rail, and as we're seeing near Yosemite, lives and livelihoods across the West threatened by wildfire. The climate crisis is real, and it is here. The good news is we know what we have to do, and America is fully capable of rising to this occasion, as we have done with every other great threat that we have faced as a country in our history. We have the power to stop the worst potential outcomes of the climate crisis, and even to seize the opportunities arising from the innovation and the jobs and the work that will be needed to meet this moment. And we have to do that work together, which brings us to today's important news. As you know, this past November, President Biden signed into effect the bipartisan infrastructure law. And we're now making the biggest investments in the better part of a century to modernize our transportation infrastructure, our roads and bridges, our transit and trains, our ports and waterways, as well as unprecedented investments in things like broadband internet and clean drinking water. And a big part of this law is funding to help protect communities against extreme weather. So today we are proud to launch a first-of-its-kind $7.3 billion initiative to modernize America's infrastructure to withstand extreme weather, so that the roads, bridges, transit, and waterways that people rely on can stay open when you need them the most. It's called, appropriately, the PROTECT program. And states can use this funding to do things like redesign and rebuild bridges to withstand flooding. They can build evacuation routes so that people can escape disasters and first responders can get to and from sites more safely. States facing wildfires can add protective features around roads like debris catchment basins or larger culverts to prevent landslides. Utah alone will get tens of millions of dollars over the next 5 years from this program. The program is an even better investment when you consider that it's going to mitigate things like the $145 billion in damages that extreme weather events cost Americans just last year in damaged homes and businesses and lives. Our country will finally be in a position to adapt our infrastructure before disaster strikes. This is the first dedicated transportation program to help states do this critical work. But I'll say our department has already been doing what we can with what we have, and I think we can offer some good examples to states as they take the lead in planning for how best to use these resources. One example comes from Findlay, Ohio. It's a town of about 40,000 people which flooded in 2007. Hundreds of homes and businesses were damaged or forced to move. Now we're helping Findlay replace a century-old railroad bridge with a modern ballast deck bridge that will not only help people get to work, but also reduce the risk of flooding damage. Or in Hawaii, there is a 4.5-mile section of the 2-lane Honoapiilani Highway which runs along the water, and it's repeatedly flooded due to rising sea levels. So we're supporting the local community as they weigh options like whether to build shoreline protection or relocate that highway further inland. Now, transportation is not just put at risk by climate change, it's also the biggest contributor to climate change, which means that transportation should aspire to be the biggest part of the solution. And we're seeing a lot of pioneering solutions from these leaders here in Utah. Utah helped lead a coalition with Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, and Wyoming to create the electric vehicle charging network called Charge West. That effort won't just fight climate change, it will save Utah residents money and improve air quality. And the Biden-Harris administration is proud to help fund its implementation. For those in a gas-powered vehicle, our administration announced ambitious new fuel efficiency standards, which will save a typical household hundreds in gasoline costs and accelerate our independence from foreign oil. We're also proud to support Utah's innovative, bipartisan efforts to give people more options to get around efficiently. This state's investments in train and transit service will improve residents' air quality and save people money and time. Utah is the state where in 1869 the final Golden Spike was driven into the ground, completing the Transcontinental Railroad. And we believe it can be a leader in the future of rail as well. I know a lot of this sounds very common sense. We all know that a fire or a flood doesn't pick out Republican homes or Democrat-owned businesses to destroy. And it's clear that so many leaders here in Utah get this across party lines. Which is why it's surprising to me that in Washington we still hear some denying that climate change is real and urgent. All I'll say is that Americans should trust their own experience more than political talking points and continue to seek those leaders who focus on improving the air that our children breathe and the roads that our people count on to get to work. We don't have time to debate whether this is urgent anymore. We have to get to work, and we are. And in states across the country, communities across the nation, we see Americans coming together, as people are doing here, to implement real solutions and make people's lives better. And now, through the bipartisan infrastructure law, we're bringing resources to help those communities deliver. This is about protecting people and jobs and the infrastructure those people and jobs count on from the immediate threats of extreme weather. It's about protecting the first responders who protect us. And it's about keeping Utah and the whole country safe and vibrant with a good quality of life and lower costs for the long term. No one individual caused the extreme events we're facing today, and no one individual can stop it. It's something we're responsible for addressing together, and we are. So we are proud to be teaming up with you in this national effort. And when we see the kind of work happening here and the kind of work that's going to happen with these new resources across the country, it gives me great hope for the future. Thanks very much for the chance to join you. I think we have a little time for Q&A, which I believe the governor is going to guide.
I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you, Senator. We do appreciate our visitors who are here with us, our dignitaries who are here, mayors of Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County. Welcome. We're glad to have you here. We have the mayor of South Jordan, I think, is with us as well, Mayor Ramsey. Thank you for joining us, and of course, Lieutenant Governor Henderson. We're so grateful to have you here today. With that, we are open to any questions. Ben, please.
So what are you going to buy with the money, Governor?
What am I going to buy with the money? That's a great question. This is a new announcement. We're working with the Department of Transportation, with our transportation board, to decide where we're going to invest this money. But certainly, our burn scar areas are very high priority. Another priority, of course, are our canyon areas. We've made big investments in Little and Big Cottonwood canyons, where we often have, when we have snowpack that melts very quickly, we'll have rock slides, and we'll have avalanches as well. This is money that we can use to help prevent those things, or at least to keep the roads open when those disasters happen. So we're very excited to have additional resources. We're investing in these projects every year anyway, so this is just an influx that will help us with our current plans, and hopefully free up some money for some other important infrastructure investments.
Governor, how quickly do you think people would see actual projects being completed? I know the money's over a course of several years.
Sure.
Can you put a timeline on when people could actually see things?
Yeah, we'll be completing these projects every year as that money becomes available. Of course, we have wildfires every year, so every year we have a new area that needs this type of investment. So a great example right now, Millard County, where the Lieutenant Governor has been working very closely with Millard County officials. And I will say that the transportation piece is just one part of that, right? There are homes that will be flooded because of these events. So we're working with FEMA. That was part of our meetings with the Western Governors Association, was to work with FEMA and other organizations to help us get more funding to build retention ponds, to help clean the water. That's something else we're very worried about. You'll remember the Dollar Ridge fire, I think that's what it was called. That's created a water hazard for Duchesne County. So as that black mud comes down and gets into the rivers, it can get into our water supply. So we have a multi-million-dollar project out there to clean up the water supply as well. So all of these things are working constantly, and we're trying to streamline some of that funding and bring those organizations together, and we sure appreciate our federal partners making that happen. Other questions?
Can I also ask about wildfires? It seems like Pioneer Day wasn't as apocalyptic as maybe some worried about. Maybe fewer used fireworks when you asked them to. Where are we at right now in your view? Wildfires and drought, and just the current risk?
Sure. So the drought situation right now, if you look at the drought map, we're better than we were last year. So that's the positive news. But better is a very low bar. We were in such, I mean, most of the state is in extreme drought right now, which is level 4. We have about close to 10%, I think, of the state, which is in exceptional drought, which is the highest level of drought, and so we're very concerned about that. I'm grateful to Utahns who stepped up in a very big way. We asked them, we went on the news stations, social media. We asked everybody to not do personal fireworks, and we saw a huge reduction in the personal fireworks. There were no major fires caused by fireworks over the 24th of July. So Utahns stepped up. We're grateful for that. I will say that after 90-ish days of no rain in St. George, they're flooding. So we've seen extreme rain events down there, and we're grateful for the water that's coming into southern Utah, but it is still very dry in northern Utah, and that's our biggest concern right now. But again, that speaks to the extremes that Secretary Buttigieg was talking about, that you can go from very dry to flooding, and of course we're used to that in the West. That's not uncommon, but making sure that our infrastructure is prepared for that is very important. Please.
You talked about roadways. I'm curious about how the Protect funding is going to go to transit and intercity connections.
So, transit is at risk too. A good example is Portland, where they had to shut down the whole system because they were approaching 115-degree heat, and the cables were literally at risk of melting. So we're really looking at every kind of infrastructure that could be vulnerable here within certain boundaries laid out by the bipartisan infrastructure law. And the threats are different in different places. But what we've seen is there's no part of America that's immune to this. And so we've got to do everything we can to plan for the future. And if a road's washing out each year and you're putting it back the same way each year, it's time for us to help you do something different.
Sure, thank you. So this I don't know. We haven't looked directly at how this funding can be used for that. Again, it's more transportation and transit related, and so we'd have to find what the nexus is there. But I will tell you that there are other portions of funding that are coming forward that we appreciate. Again, our federal partners. I think you've all reported very well that that Senator Romney and other members of Congress, Representative Stewart, have worked very closely on some legislation from the federal side that will help us as we're looking at additional studies, additional investments in ways to protect the Great Salt Lake and increase the flows there. So we have buy-in from our federal partners now. I went back in February and met with leadership, some members of congressional leadership, to tell them how important this was to us, and we're grateful to see them helping us out and coming along, because this isn't just an issue for Utah. If the lake does dry up, again, much like fire is not Republican or Democrat, neither is dust, and it carries across state lines and will impact this entire region, and so that's why it's not just a state issue; it's a federal issue as well. Please.
What projects in particular are going to be made possible because of this funding? I know you talked about how we're quite literally just trying to put out fires right now with our current funding. Is there anything in particular that you want to focus on? I know you talked about all the fires.
Yeah, so what we're really focused on when these burn scars hit and those floods come, when the rains come, it's really about enlarging culverts, making borrow ditches deeper, retention ponds where necessary, so that the flows go there before they hit the roadways, and then so those are specific projects. I mean, those are things that we do, but we never have enough funding to do as much of it as we need to protect from the next storm that's coming. Same thing in the canyons. We have made significant investments in the canyons, but every year we find another weakness, and another part of the canyon that needs to be upgraded. And so those are the specifics that we're looking at to improve transportation in those storms. You remember we had an event. It all runs together a couple years ago up in the canyons that closed the canyons for a couple days, and so those are the types of things that we're looking to prevent. Please.
Are you interested in refunding any investments already made by local communities for what this funding is for?
Well, I don't think the funding allows us to refund, but these are for new projects going forward. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and one thing I want to emphasize, because there are some states and communities we visited where the community or the state has stepped up, and I think some people are thinking, well, why did we do that if federal money is coming? The truth is the need is so great that we have to have a both-and approach, and a place that has already stepped up to make their investments is just that much better positioned to take advantage of the new federal money that's coming in.
Thank you. And I just want to be clear. While we very much appreciate the money that will be coming in, it's not enough. There's still so much more to do. As the Secretary mentioned, the list is far longer than the funding that we have, either at the state or local or federal side right now. Other questions, please.
Yeah, I guess this is one for the Secretary, because you mentioned that there's so much to do, and every state is basically having different ways the climate is impacting them. How do you address that in the future in the sense of like prolonging this program?
So I do think there's never been a program like this, and I think across the 5-year life of this program, we will learn lessons about what a likely next generation of investments might need to look like. We're contemplating everything from hurricane evacuation routes that are important in the Carolinas, to flood resilience and drought resilience, and to the governor's point, sometimes the flood and drought concerns are happening in the same place because you're seeing more and more of the extremes. Some things that are actually not related to weather but are a matter of resilience, like seismic preparedness, that are important for bridges and other assets. So part of what was built into the flexibility of this program, the fact that this $7.3 billion is going out by formula to the states, is that we don't have all the answers in Washington about what this should look like. We're looking to the states to propose what's going to make the most sense for them, and I think we'll learn a great deal from what comes up from around the country.
Last question.
Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Utah. Bienvenido a Utah. So, the first question is for the Secretary. If you can kind of summarize what the plan is in Spanish for us. And the second question is for the Governor. How are you going to use that money in Spanish as well, if you have some mind?
I will do my best. This feels like a quiz. Give me a moment. Ahora nos estamos enfocando en preparar los estados y comunidades para los efectos de los cambios en la clima. Esos cambios impactan a nuestra infraestructura y con esos fondos podemos invertir para mejorar esta infraestructura hasta que sea más fuerte por el futuro.
Well done, well done.
¿Be honest?
Sí, yeah, better than me. Vamos, sí. Lo que él dijo, vamos a hacer lo mismo. Esperamos tener la oportunidad de investir ese dinero en nuestras comunidades para hacerles más fuerzos. Es que tenemos los fuegos bien grandes en nuestro estado y después cuando las lluvias vienen hay temporadas de floods. Sí, y queremos proteger nuestras comunidades por esas cosas. Entonces, es una oportunidad bien grande y estamos bien agradecidos al secretario y los que están participando en este programa. Well done. Thank you all again. We're so grateful to the secretary for his time here and his team. They've been so gracious in their time with us. I know he's going to be traveling to a couple areas of the state. We appreciate their time doing that. And I will just say to that the next to last question that was asked, I think you will see, and I hope what you'll see is bipartisan support for these programs as we're improving our states, which will make it more likely that this is a program that continues 5 years from now. So we'll certainly be working to make that happen, and look forward to working with our partners across the aisle. Thank you for joining us today.